Storytime about how my best friend got over. So a little background information. We were in 9th grade and we were 15 whenever this all happened. We're gonna call my best friend Ethan. Well, Ethan was dating this girl, Brianna, and they broke up after like 7 months of dating. Which, if we're being completely honest, it was for the best. They were toxic as obviously. What does Ethan do after this happens? He comes to his best friends for advice because obviously he still loved Brianna. Anyways, so he comes to me and our other best friend, Matthew, and he's like, yeah, like, what should I do? Still love her, still want to be with her, but our relationship was so toxic, da 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 da. And Matt and I were like, no, you do not need her in your life. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I just wish my friends would let me be delusional. Do not sit there and tell me that him and I are the most toxic people on earth when we're together. Tell me that him and I are an amazing couple and we're going to be together. Like, I will literally tell my friend when I want her to let me be delusional. I don't know if that's just me. Anyways, we were not about to let Ethan be delusional. We did not want him near this bitch. I had good intentions. I didn't want Ethan to be with her because of how toxic they were. Matt, on the other hand, anyway, so like I said, we're hyping Ethan up and he's like, yeah, you know what? That I don't care if she gets another boyfriend. I don't need her. Well, Ethan, you really shouldn't have said that in front of Matt. Especially the I don't care if she gets another boyfriend part. Anyway, so fast forward, Matt ends up getting with Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Obviously, this is going to make Ethan upset. Personally, in my opinion, Brianna was not a nice person. She was one of those girls that was very fake and thought that she was above everybody else. So Ethan goes and talks to Matt and he's like, hey, what the happened to, oh, you don't need that, she's toxic, da 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 da, she's this, that, and the next. And I'm just like on the sidelines watching this unfold because I just wasn't getting involved. Anyways, so Matt is like, well, you said that you didn't care if she got another boyfriend. When he said that, that did not go over well with Ethan at all. He was not about to have him use that as an excuse to over. So then Ethan goes, you know, you're my best friend, I trusted you, da 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 da. And then Matt, guess what he does? He just shrugs and he's like, well, I don't know what you want me to do. Anyway, so this led to Ethan and Matt physically fighting.
I ain't gonna lie, he was mad as a motherfucker.
Matt ended up with a broken nose and Brianna ended up dumping him. So, you know, he really just like got beat up for no reason. But that's what you get for being a snake. Karma's a bitch.
Am I the asshole for cutting off my stepmom for wearing white to my wedding? This is not my story time. I said I mean on Instagram. My stepmom has always wanted me to think of her as my bestie. She's like a cool mom, you know? When my parents got divorced, it was pretty amicable. There was very little drama. And I appreciated that because my parents didn't want me to grow up in an environment where I had to choose between them. My mom remarried and I love my stepdad. He's like a second dad to me. He also has a lot of money, so he pays for everything. Father and my stepdad actually get along really, really well. They both paid for my wedding. 30 years old and I got married to my best friend. Planning of our wedding was seamless because I had a great wedding planner. And like I said, my husband's parents and my parents paid for everything. We had a healthy budget for the wedding. My stepmom early on wanted to get involved and she was trying to pick out really expensive things for the wedding. For the wedding, we actually didn't want to spend more than around $30,000. We wanted to spend more money on traveling for our honeymoon. But my stepmom started inviting herself to every single meeting I had with the wedding planner. My husband was very involved, so him and I basically chose everything together. Whenever my mom would come, she would try to come too. This is when she started trying to pick out the most expensive flowers, the most expensive cake, and flavors that we didn't even like, and then she would insist on us picking those things. Every single time she did something, I would complain to my mom. My mom would just subtly let her know that we weren't going to choose those things, that we were trying to stay within a small budget. That's when she started complaining that we should have a bigger budget. That seeing as how all of the parents were pitching in, our budget should be around $100,000. When she said this to me and my husband, we both looked at each other and laughed. We explained to her that instead of having a huge, ginormous wedding, we wanted to prioritize our honeymoon. We had planned to go island hopping in Greece and spend time in the south of France. And of course, we would prefer to stay in beautiful, luxurious hotels. So she said that we were being selfish, that we were going to deprive our families of the wedding that we all deserved, and that the wedding experience should be magical and huge, and that no expense should be spared. Couldn't believe that she was saying those things. She sounded so stupid. I walked straight to my dad and I explained to him that he needed to control her and ask her to please stay away. Dad told me that he couldn't do that because if he did, she would get upset. Every single time family is involved in any situation in any of these story times, someone's always going gonna get their feelings hurt, and that's why people don't speak up. Once my dad insisted on not telling her, I had to do it myself. I told her for the rest of the wedding planning, my husband and I would take care of everything. This is when she starts to cry. Dad finally opened his mouth and explained to her that it was just best for everyone. Then she tried to guilt trip me. She told me that her and I had been best friends for decades, which is so not true. She said she likes for me to think of her as my best friend. She's not my bestie. She stormed off, and then my dad made me go apologize to her, which I did. And this is the thing I regret the most. What she did next is so unbelievably rude. You're just gonna have to go to part 2. Am I the asshole for cutting off my stepmom for wearing white to my wedding? This is not my story time instead of me on Instagram. This is when I apologized for asking her to stay out of my wedding. This is the biggest mistake I made. This made her feel like she could do whatever she wanted. The good thing is she did stay out of the wedding planning, but the bad thing is that she actually succeeded in making me feel guilty. Even went as far as to tell my dad that I had never heard her this way before. For the rest of the wedding planning, whenever she knew that we were going to go meet with the planner, she would just mope around my dad's house and ask me what we decided on afterwards. Because I'm so nice, I actually decided to tell her what we were choosing. But of course, every single time I showed her something, she would start to criticize. At this point, my husband put his foot down and forbade me from showing her anything because he would see how I would react every time she told me something. Finally, the day of the wedding arrives. We landed on a beautiful cake. The venue was small, but it was so beautiful. And we had every single thing we ever wanted. The entire family came over to get ready with me. This is where all the drama started. I had one bridesmaid who wore lavender and my mother who wore lavender as well. I told my stepmom that I would prefer her to wear lavender since she is my stepmom, but I told her she could pretty much wear any color she wanted. For the end of us getting ready, I noticed someone in white out of the corner of my eye. I was getting the final touches on my makeup, so I really couldn't open my eyes. I initially thought it was like somebody from the service. Then that's when I hear my mom gasp. I quickly open my eyes and see my stepmom standing in front of me, dressed in a full white gown. It didn't look like a wedding dress, but it was a gown. I guess to be more specific, it was cream colored. My dress was white, but with a hint of lavender. I couldn't help it, and I asked her, "Why are you wearing white?" She then looked around to the entire wedding party and said, "You told me I could wear whatever color I wanted." My mom could not help herself. I told her that everyone knows wearing white to a wedding is inappropriate. My stepmom told me that we were just reading too much into it, but I was clearly upset. I told my dad he had no idea that she was wearing white, so she obviously didn't tell him because he would have told her not to. Thankfully, the wedding was fun and everything went off without a hitch, but after the wedding, I completely cut her off. I sent her a message telling her that she crossed several lines and that there was no way I could have her in my life after this. My mom and even my dad agreed with this, and my dad basically told her that she needed to stand down. She's been texting me and calling me nonstop, and I just blocked her. Am I overreacting? Wedding pictures look great, except for the fact that my stepmom is in a white dress. My husband wants me to just get over it because it's family drama, but I think I should stand my ground. Self-care sister out.
Story time about how this girl and her boyfriend beat me up. So a little background information. I was in 11th grade and I was 17 years old. And in the summer, my friend and I went to go and watch fireworks for the 4th of July at this park. And most of the people there went to a completely different school. But we ended up meeting this group of guys, and I was really vibing with the one guy who was there. He was super cute, super chill, and we got along great. And I just want to put this out there. I did not think to ask that he had a girlfriend because he was being super flirtatious and just really wasn't acting like he had a girlfriend. I literally just hate how we have to ask people if they're in relationships now because they don't want to be honest or loyal. And then we look like the bad guys because they were dishonest. Anyway, so him and I start to hang out a lot, and he really likes me. I really like him. And we went to this football game at his school, and we ended up doing the nasty. After that, I'm in the bleachers with my friends, and one of my friends tells me, yeah, he has a girlfriend. So she couldn't have told me this before we did the nasty. Anyways, like for part 2. About how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game, and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends, and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point, we had already been talking for 2 months, and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number 2, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what could make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it, and he told me that he was gonna break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna wait for him to break it off with her, and I'm still gonna talk to him. So eventually, he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was gonna break up with you. That day, he called me and he was like, hey, do you wanna hang out? And I was shook that he did not bring up anything that I said to his girlfriend. Like for part 3. Story time about how my sister sold my nudes. Yes, my own sister. So a little background information. I was in 12th grade and I was pretty popular. And my sister, on the other hand, she was in 9th grade. I'm not even saying this to boost my ego, but she was jealous of me and everybody could tell. Mainly because of the fact that she didn't have her high school glow up, you know, she low-key still looked like a 6th grader. And there were very few guys who gave her attention, and some of the guys would even tell her that I was hotter than her. So that did not help the situation at all. Not like I even paid attention to any of these guys because I had a boyfriend. And my sister and I still shared a room even though our brothers got their own rooms. So she could literally go through my shit anytime she wanted. Well, since we shared a room and I never thought that she would sell my nudes, sometimes I would take these exposing pictures of myself while she was in the room. Well, she had this one friend named Jessica who also was weirdly obsessed with me. One night she was saying how funny it would be to sell someone's nudes, like part 2 about how my sister sold my nudes. So like I said, my sister had this friend, and the one night they were talking about how funny it would be to sell somebody's pics. We all laughed, joked about it, the conversation was over and done with. I thought that was it. Like, in all honesty, I thought it was one of those things where you guys make plans to do something, and then after the conversation, you never talk about it again, and you never actually do what you said you were going to do because it was so out of pocket. So my sister's friend slept over that night, and I woke up, went to school earlier because I have volunteer work to do, so my sister usually just takes the bus. Well, I accidentally left my computer at school, so I called my sister, asked her if she could grab it and bring it into school. Now, my computer is connected to my phone. Well, I guess they decided to be little creeps, and they went on my computer and they found my pictures, and they sent them to themselves. And since my phone and computer are hooked up, I was able to see that they sent the pictures to themselves. So I started blowing up her phone, but by first period, I had a bunch of people telling me that they were about to buy my pictures. My sister literally made an ad and put it on Snapchat. My boyfriend broke up.
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? His best friend is a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We actually met a couple of months ago on a dating app. We went on several dates over the course of 4 months, and after that he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. While we were dating, I met a couple of his friends, one of them being his girl best friend, and she is bi, which I did know of. Okay, but here's the messed up thing. The day I met this girl, she was staring at me. Not just like staring at me a little bit, hardcore staring. She even told my boyfriend that I was so attractive that he needed to take care of me because she could snatch me up. And she said this in front of me. My boyfriend thought it was hilarious and just laughed at her. And to be honest with you, even though yes, she's a girl, she made me feel extremely uncomfortable. She would always compliment my body in front of everybody. She would comment on how my boobs are so big. We all went to the beach one time, and she said, I quote, "If your bikini top pops off, I don't mind, girl." I did not laugh. She even went up behind me and tried to untie my bikini. My boyfriend thought it was so funny. Part 2 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid, she's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was gonna steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party and there were tons of people, but she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around, and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just gonna take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her, and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not even on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl, and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, "Do you mind if she comes over?" And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time, I was gonna defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up, and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologized. apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, "What, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again?" Instead, I smacked her. Really, really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye.
Story time about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade, and there was this boy that I really liked who lived like 10 minutes away from me. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to hang out, and my mom was strict about me not hanging out with people after 7 o'clock at night, especially a boy. I wasn't even allowed to hang out with boys. And my grandma, my mom, and my brother and I all lived together, and we all had our own rooms. Mine was on the first floor of the house, so I snuck out the window and I went and hung out with him. So I snuck out at around 3 and came back at around 4 a.m. And my grandma comes into my room to wake me up for school. And I guess that I had been laying on my side and my hair was like pulled up, because literally all I remember waking up to is her smacking me up out of my sleep and screaming at me because there was a hickey on my neck. She's like, "I'm telling your mom whenever she gets home, your window's gonna be screwed shut." And I keep telling her it's not a hickey, so she calls my brother over. And he's like, "Yeah, that's definitely a hickey," because he likes to kiss her ass. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, she's like, "I'm telling your mom," and I keep telling her that it's not a hickey. And thankfully, my mom already went to work. She had work at 6 a.m. So I got on the bus, I go to school, and I'm talking to my friend and telling her about how I'm literally going to be crucified whenever I get home. And she told me about how her older sister was in like the same situation that I'm in now. So she texted her older sister asking what she did because she never got caught. And I was like, okay, well, if she used makeup, my mom's going to find out because she's not dumb. Well, apparently her older sister burnt herself with a curling iron. Yes, literally burnt herself, but she ended up getting away with it. So fast forward, I get home at around 3 o'clock and I sneak in through the back door so that way my grandma won't see that I came in the house, because she literally would have made me sit in the living room until my mom got home. So I go upstairs and I burn myself with a curling iron, which is not fun. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, I snuck in through the back door so that way my grandma wouldn't see me, because if she saw me, she would have made me wait in the living room with her until my mom got home. So, you know, burnt myself with the curling iron and my mom gets home. And since I'm on the first floor, I can literally hear my grandma talking to my mom and my brother, of course. My grandma's like, "Yeah, she has hickeys all over her neck," which is literally an exaggeration because there was one small one. So my mom calls me out to the living room. I go out and she's like, "All right, show it to me." And I'm like, "Show you what?" She's like, "Don't play stupid. Your grandma already told me the whole situation." And I was like, "Mom, I literally burnt myself with a curling iron." And my grandma's like screaming and freaking out because I'm lying. She's like, "You better tell your mother the truth right now, da 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 da." So I show the burn to my mom. She looks at my grandma and she's like, "So you're gonna tell me that's not a burn on her neck?" And she was like, "That's not how it looked this morning, blah, blah, blah." So I got away with it, but now my grandma literally stalks me to see if I'm doing anything wrong so she can tell my mom. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The two foundations that we have going up against each other are the She Glam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the She Glam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk, run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. 11 years ago, I was set to marry a man that I'd only known for 6 months. As some of you might know, I am an actress, and that's how I met him. We were both cast in the same film as boyfriend and girlfriend. And because of this, the director wanted us to spend time together and create chemistry. The director even asked us to rehearse some of our kissing scenes, which really we only rehearsed one time. Was it awkward? Absolutely. But spending so much time together during rehearsals really did it. It's kind of hard to not develop feelings for somebody that you're working with who just happens to be attractive
attractive and you're supposed to be developing this chemistry. A few weeks later, we were dating. A few months later, we decided to move to LA together to pursue our acting dreams. But soon after we moved to LA, the cracks started showing. I am the poster child for a go-getter. I'm a hustler. I will do everything in my power to chase my dreams. His motivation was not the same. While I had 4 jobs, he had 1 job. I was paying for the bills. I was even paying for his student loans. I was sending out emails and submitting both of us to projects. Are you angry yet? Because it gets worse. I was his provider in every sense of the word. Part 2 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I was paying for the bills, providing for him, even paying off his student loans. I also cooked for him. I also helped him by trying to find him acting jobs. I was the best possible fiance he could have ever asked for. Around that time, I decided to quit some of my jobs. I transitioned over to working at a dancing club as a cocktail waitress. And this is around the time that I asked him if he could get a higher paying job. At the time, he was working at a movie theater. He was making $8 an hour, and to him, this was enough. It was enough because I was paying for the rest. And when I wanted to quit my jobs, he was against it. Why do you think? I felt like his bank account, like a debit card he could swipe every time he needed money. He would take and I would give. So when I asked him to consider getting a better job, he told me that he didn't want to because his best friend worked at the movie theater he worked at. He was comfortable. He loved his job. It was an easy job for a man. I got to watch all the free movies I wanted. What more could I ask for? Partner that would help me? No, that was too much to ask for. But can you believe that it actually does get worse? Part 3 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. When I asked him to get a higher paying job so he could help me out with the bills, he flat out said no. His job at the theater was too cozy. And a few weeks later, I experienced something horrible at the dance club that I was working at, which made me reflect on every choice I had made up until that point. I left my family to move away with somebody I didn't know, to a new city, thousands of miles away. I left my mom with major depression. To this day, I still hold so much guilt for that. And I told my fiance about the essay that I experienced at the club. His response was for me to get over it. When I told him I wanted to quit, he said no. How dare I try to quit the job that was providing for him? I broke up with him 2 days later, only to fall into an even more toxic relationship. But that's for another time. Self-care sister out.
Story time about how my fiance cheated on me with 10 other girls. So a little background information, I met this guy on Instagram and we're gonna call him Bryce. Now, when him and I met, he was stationed in Korea and he refused to ask me to be his girlfriend until he came home. So I waited an entire year for him to ask me to be his girlfriend, which low-key should have been a red flag, but he made it seem romantic in some twisted, weird way. So fast forward, he comes home in February and he kept to his promise. The first day that we met, he asked me to be his girlfriend. So I say yes. Fast forward, him and I start having a ton of arguments because of things that he was doing while he was in Korea. Fast forward, we're officially together for 9 months. So fast forward, of course, he gets deployed to Europe in like September of 2022. So this man decides that he's going to propose to me in July and then beg me to get married to him before he leaves. Now, I may have ignored the first red flags, but I'm not dumb. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with 10 other girls. So like I said, this man begs me to get married to him before he leaves, and thank goodness I didn't because divorce papers would have been served the same day. So fast forward, he starts acting super weird. He's going out 24/7. He's getting drunk. He's not wearing the ring that he begged me to get him. Yes, he literally begged me for a ring so that way women would know that he had a girlfriend. Well, then of course I get a DM from a girl on Instagram asking if him and I were still together. And then after talking to her, I realized he literally made a Tinder 2 days after he got deployed. And what was his excuse? Oh, I wanted to meet friends to teach me German. And listen, I was not born last night, so I kept that conversation going because I wanted to get to the bottom of what the fuck was actually going on. And then, of course, he finally comes clean that he cheated on me with a bunch of girls. Oh, and you want to know the icing on the cake? One of them was a minor. Yup. After I leave him, he has the audacity to ask for my ring back, but I threatened to tell Storytime about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So a little background information, I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years, and we're gonna call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular, and this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, someway, him and I started hooking up. Right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways, Well, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother and he still doesn't know. So like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means, yay babe, I'm going to stop cheating on you since you're pregnant, but only because you're pregnant. So now my boyfriend is raising my 1-year-old daughter who he thinks is his and I'm still hooking up with his brother.
Storytime about how my husband makes me pay for everything and still controls all of my money while he's totally unemployed and broke. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. 2 of those years we were separated and we recently got back together last year. He lost his job during COVID, so when we got back together, he didn't have a lot of money. Obviously, I didn't really mind. I was just happy we were getting back together. And if you're wondering why we separated, it's because he got really jealous and controlling of everything I ever did. When we got back together, I told him that he needed to change that. And I really could see a change in him this time around. The only problem was that he refused to get a job. I have a really good salary. I make about $80,000 a month. Theoretically, I could totally support him. When I asked him why he didn't want to get a job, he told me that it just wasn't for him. And he also told me that he wanted some time off and he just wanted to travel. Well, this is when things start to get complicated. When we got back together, he was living with his parents, so he ended up moving into my very nice apartment. I live in a really beautiful high-rise. I have a doorman, a gym, indoor pool, and then he moved in with all of his junk. I had to start paying for everything. Anytime he wanted to go to dinner or order food or buy groceries, I was the one footing the bill. He even uses my Amazon account to order whatever he wants. While he was at home playing video games, I was in my office working my ass off. But things get worse. Part 2 is up. Every time about how my husband controls all my money while he's unemployed and totally broke. Disclaimers is now I started telling sending me on Instagram. After 3 months of me paying for everything and him using my Amazon account to buy whatever he wanted, including gaming consoles, this man had the audacity to tell me that I was spending too much money on my designer bags. Yeah, you heard that right. One day I decided to treat myself for my birthday by getting myself a Chanel bag. As soon as he saw the new purchase, he started acting like I was addicted to shopping. And then he starts bringing up all these other things. How I like going to Starbucks, how I like going to the nail salon, and that's when I realized it. He had access to my bank account. He could see all of the transactions that I was making. And of course he could. I was in my office all day while he had access to my laptop at home. And of course it didn't occur to me to change my passwords. I was actually really shocked when he started bringing all of this up. Then he suggested that I should let him manage my money. And at first I just went with it. Said okay, and that's when he literally took my credit card from me. Then he started moving money around my accounts and started buying crypto. After 2 months of that, I was done. I asked him to give me my credit card back, which he did. He started guilting me into feeling like I shouldn't go to the nail salon and do these little small things that make me feel good about myself. He was brainwashing me. A few weeks later, it was time for me to upgrade my car. So I decided to get a Tesla. And when I told him, he got so angry. I could see in his face that he was so envious. He spent 2 hours trying to talk me out of getting the stupid Tesla. But the very next day, I went straight to the Tesla store and bought my car. When I finally got the car, he started driving it all over town before I drove it. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband controls all my money while he's totally broke and unemployed. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After he started driving my brand new Tesla before I did, I started getting really snippy with him. I was always angry and in a bad mood. That's when he started getting even more controlling and this time jealous again. He started to suspect that I was cheating on him. He started showing up to my office to just check on me. By the way, I'm totally aware that if I leave him, he has no money. So of course he's going to be totally controlling of me. Unfortunately, this is when we started getting into really big fights. I reproached him for everything. Him controlling all of my money and literally telling me what I could or could not buy. And I finally mustered up the courage to ask him to get a job again. And I told him that if he didn't get a job to start paying for half of the bills and everything else, that I would simply file for divorce. He started to cry and he threw a tantrum, but eventually he said yes. Do you think that he moved a muscle to go get a job? No, he didn't. So I took it upon myself to see if my company was hiring. And they did. So now he's got a really good job because of me. I revoked all his access to my accounts and I have full control of all the crypto. Now I give him a weekly allowance. I cannot wait until he starts getting paid. My parents think I should get a divorce, but I'm not sure. What should I do?